This is Dom Bettinelli, the CEO of SQPN, with a brief but very important message. For more than a decade, SQPN has produced the Catholic faith and pop culture podcasts that you love. We're a nonprofit organization, so it's only your generosity that lets us carry out our mission. We haven't run a fundraiser in 2 years, and that's why we need to ask for your help right now. Please make a pledge of whatever amount you can afford to help us continue providing your favorite podcasts, as well as exciting new ones we have planned. To make your pledge and find out about the free thank you gifts we'd like to send you, visit sqpn.com/give. That's sqpn.com/give. Thank you for your generosity. May we hear from you today? You're listening to The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Ant-Man and the Wasp, where we will discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings of this Marvel superhero movie. And joining me today on the panel are Trent Horn. Hi, Trent.
Hello, Dom.
And Andrew Hermes. Hello, Andrew.
Hi, Dom.
So, Andrew and Trent are first-time panelists with us on SQPN and on Secrets of Movies and TV Shows. And so I wanted to introduce them a bit to the audience first. And you both work for Catholic Answers. Is that correct?
That's right. I'm an apologist and speaker, so I write articles, books, and other resources for people to listen to. I also do our radio show at Catholic Answers Live.
Excellent. And Andrew, what do you do there?
Yeah, I am the video producer here at Catholic Answers. So what I mainly do is I produce the TV show, Catholic Answers Live TV. It's a show that airs on EWTN every week. And it's basically a best of compilation of our popular daily live show on the radio that we produce into a TV show.
Awesome. Cool. And I assume you're both big superhero movie fans, right? Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, you can usually find either of us wearing superhero T-shirts into the office. We don't have that strict of a dress code here.
That's awesome. And
absolutely.
Given that Catholic Answers is located in San Diego, I assume that Comic-Con is a big event for everyone there.
Yes, it is. Yeah, I attend every year. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a big deal for me.
I'm quite jealous.
I was grateful, I should say, to be able to attend. Last year, it was really funny. I was on a train with my wife and children, and I had tried to get tickets last year, and I couldn't. And I talked to a guy on the train. He liked my kids, and we were chatting a bit, and he worked at Comic-Con. And I said, yeah, I wish I could go, but you can never get tickets. He said, I tell you what day of the week, except for Saturday, would you want to go? I said, well, I have Friday off. He said, okay, I'll send you a ticket. And so he just sent that to me, and I was able to be able to go last year. I did the request this year, but I was only able to get one pass on Thursday. They're hard to come by.
Wow, that's amazing. That's awesome. I am quite jealous. I in the Boston area, they have a Boston Comic-Con, but it's not the same thing, of course.
Yeah, it's not.
So let's talking about this particular movie that we're going to talk about here, which is Ant-Man and the Wasp. It's the sequel from earlier this year, from 2018, to the 2015 movie Ant-Man. And it was, a bit of a surprise, I think, that there was a sequel to this when we first heard about Ant-Man. This is kind of a minor character in Marvel, isn't it? The Ant-Man. Let me preface this because I've said this before. I'm not a huge comic book fan, but I like the superhero movies. So I may not be up on all of my comic knowledge, but do you guys know? I mean, isn't Ant-Man kind of a relatively minor superhero compared to, say, Captain America or Iron Man?
Well, Ant-Man was the Hank Pym iteration of Ant-Man was an important part of Avengers, one of the important founding members of the Avengers. He's definitely not as well known in Marvel Comics as, Spider-Man or now even Iron Man because of the films. Iron Man himself was kind of a B-list character before the 2008 MCU film brought him back to the public consciousness. But so he was a big part of the comics, and a lot of that had to be changed, though, to satisfy the Marvel Cinematic Universe. For example, in Avengers Age of Ultron, it is Tony Stark, Iron Man, who creates the Ultron artificial intelligence who goes rogue, whereas in the comics it was Hank Pym who created Ultron, but not a big character, but still an important one, at least especially with Avengers lore.
Okay. But the way that they've kind of recreated the character here, it's now like the second generation of Ant-Man with Paul Rudd's character. The name escaped me for a second.
Yeah, Scott Lang.
Scott Lang, yes. So Scott Lang is, because that's one thing that often happens, I find in the, especially in the Marvel comics, is actually DC does it too, where they have generations of people with the same superhero identity. You know, so you have a Iron Man suit picked up. Well, actually, I don't know that Iron Man is picked up. Maybe I'm wrong, but I know Captain America's suit is picked up by someone else, and Spider-Man, and famously now Thor, which is a whole nother.
Pretty much every character, yeah,
because now they have the newest iteration of Spider-Man is Miles Morales. This also, now DC's been doing this for a long time, which is interesting in certain respects, that while there's always been one Batman, there had been 3 different generations of the Flash. There was Jay Garrick Flash, the Barry Allen Flash, and then later on the Wally West Flash. And so this does happen fairly often in comic book heroes, to change things up, to kind of pass the mantle along.
Interesting. So in this one, we have, it's like in the first movie, that mantle was passed from Hank Pym to Scott Lang. And this movie kind of picks up from there. And I was kind of surprised, like how popular these two movies have been. Although I don't know if I should have been, because I was trying to think of what makes these particular movies so popular. And is it Paul Rudd? Is he particularly good at this character, or is it the humor that comes through? And that's one of the things that sort of distinguishes some of the more successful Marvel movies, from my point of view, is that they have good action, but they also have a lot of good humor. They don't take themselves too seriously. So you have Ant-Man and Ant-Man and the Wasp. You have Thor Ragnarok. And then you famously, I mean, everybody's remarked on this, you contrast that with DC movies, which are dark and heavy and brooding and don't do nearly as well.
But what's funny is when you look at that, darker movies that don't have this kind of cheeky, self-aware tone that we see in Marvel, and Marvel sometimes does this as well, that annoys me. They use a writing device called bathos, which is where you have a serious moment that is immediately undercut by a joke, so things don't get too serious.
Right.
And so, and that happens so much in Marvel films that it almost kind of annoys me a little bit. But with DC, where the DC extended universe, I think, fell into this trap, was they were trying to emulate the success of Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, which, if you look at the Dark Knight trilogy, it's especially the second movie, the Dark Knight, it's not really a superhero movie. It's more of a noir crime thriller. And so if you look at it in that sense, you can have a very engaging film that's not cracking jokes left and right. But the problem is the later DC extended universe films try to be superhero films that have that crime noir grittiness to them, but without the groundedness. So it just comes off in kind of an awkward way. That's
true. That's a good way to look at it. It's it doesn't necessarily work that crime noir. I mean, he is the what are the title for Batman is like the detective,
the greatest detective,
master detective.
Right. That's that. It like literally that's built into the DNA of the character. Whereas Superman is supposed to be, literally brighter. I mean, the in the comics, the costume is red and blue, very bright. I think they kind of figure that out. I mean, we're kind of getting into off the topic of Ant-Man and the Wasp, but I kind of want to just finish the thought we're having here, which is like they kind of figured out with Wonder Woman, which was lighter, and I mean it had some dark. It was World War I. That's not the lightest subject, but it felt lighter in some ways, and had a different feel to it. So.
And I think that this owes to the success of Ant-Man and the Wasp to bring it back around. Even when you compare to other Marvel films, there are other Marvel films that the ones that don't do as well are the ones that kind of take themselves too seriously.
Right.
Examples I think might be the original, The Incredible Hulk with Ed Norton, or probably one of the worst of the MCU films would be Thor: The Dark World.
Right.
Which is where especially I think what makes Ant-Man and the Wasp so successful is, it doesn't take itself too seriously, but especially with Ant-Man and the Wasp in comparison to Ant-Man, but both of them share this. I think a lot of times audiences are bored with a superhero film where the conflict is the world is going to end. You know, the stakes are so high. There's a blue beam of death coming down from the sky going to kill us. I mean, you look in the DC movies and the Marvel movies, there's always some blue beam of death coming down from the sky that's going to kill everybody.
A circle of trash.
Right.
Yes.
Whereas in the original Ant-Man, it's just, this weapons guy is going to get away with technology that could really wreck the world. But what made Ant-Man and the Wasp wonderful in that regard is not just the humor. I would say it's a very, pun intended, it's a small film.
Right.
And what makes it enjoyable is that the conflict is not about, save the world. It's just, we need to save Janet Van Dyne from the quantum realm. We are invested in we have a limited time window and antagonists to save this one person. And people can really wrap their heads around a concrete goal of save this one person. And you get emotionally invested in the first 5 minutes of the film to save this one person. And that goodwill carries you through the rest of the film.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to add to that. I think the success of Marvel movies in general, are attributed to that. Is they usually take a big storyline that's popular in the comics and just brings it down to a human level or on a more personal, intimate level. I mean, you can even see it in a grand movie like Infinity War. You know, you can really boil it down to a movie about, one man, who's trying to right his one wrong, in his sense, and failing his planet,
right,
and trying to save the universe by doing that. But really, it's really just a story about this broken man who's on a mission. And with Ant-Man and the Wasp, it really boils down to, it's a family movie. It's a father and his daughter trying to find, their mother and their wife. So I think, just to take it back to the DC argument, I think that's where DC failed. It's where, Batman vs Superman tried to cram Doomsday, a storyline, Death of Superman, Justice League, all in one movie. Yeah, and it just doesn't work.
Right.
So I think that's where Marvel found its bread and butter. Is every movie has its one focus. It even focuses on one genre. I mean, Ant-Man is basically, a comedy heist film.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Ant-Man and the Wasp is almost a family comedy. So I think that's where Marvel thrives.
I would go even deeper into that and to kind of take that point even further and say the best of the superhero movies are the ones that are focused on family relationships, whether it's Hank and Janet, husband and wife, or Hope and her mom and dad, or Scott and his daughter. I mean, in this movie, you have all of these relationships, and you even have a pseudo relationship between Dr. Foster and Ghost, Ava. You have these relationships that are familial, and then you see this in the other great movies. Either Thor Ragnarok is it's about a family, dysfunctional family. Thor, Odin, his sister, Freya, and I mean you have these familiar relationships. In Wonder Woman, you got that too as a DC movie where you had Wonder Woman and her mother and her extended pseudo family of the Amazons. Whereas with say Batman, you didn't have that, or the Dark Knight movies or the Superman movie, only a little bit with his mom. But
it's not convincing.
Right.
Then you have Pa Kent standing there and the tornado gets him, and you just don't feel like this is a real family.
Exactly.
And ironically, when you look at together, when I think of and you say, family superheroes, the Pixar Incredible films, The Incredibles.
Yes.
That is family films. And that's why people will say things like, well, you can't make a good Fantastic Four movie. Yes, you can. It's called The Incredibles. Yeah. That is a Fantastic Four film. And that's why it's ironic that Marvel, the Fantastic Four are called Marvel's first family. But in all three of the terrible Fantastic Four films, what they get wrong is they focus on the action and they don't create a believable family.
Exactly.
Well, it's going to be all good now because Marvel is going to retain the rights to Fantastic Four.
I hope.
Yeah. So hopefully they'll right that ship.
Yes. I also wanted to talk about the casting of this movie. You have a high quality cast here. Paul Rudd is pretty good at being funny, but you have Evangeline Lilly, who famously discovered and had her big break in Lost and has done a few things since then. But you have Lawrence Fishburne, you have Michelle Pfeiffer, you have
Michael Douglas.
Michael Douglas, yes, that was the name I was on the tip of my tongue. You have a lot of these great actors. Then you have these other interesting actors like Hannah John Kamen, who plays Ava, who was recently in a sci-fi series called Killjoys, which mediocre, but she's an interesting actress in herself and the few things that she's done. And then you have Sonny Burch, played by Walter Goggins, who was interestingly in a recent History Channel series called Six, about SEAL Team 6, which was it's very violent, but it's his character is a very interesting character, and he's pretty. I mean, in this he doesn't get the range he wants, but in general, this is a really good cast. You have Michael Pena, and you have a lot of good casting in this. I think that lends itself to making this a better movie than it could have been otherwise, perhaps. What do you think of the casting of this movie and the various actors who played the roles? I mean, did anybody not kind of hold up their end of the bargain in this?
I think everyone held up. I mean, like you said, that's a real cast of names, real talent in that movie. And I think, it's funny. I rewatched the movie last night, and my wife was kind of just listening to the movie because she was doing other stuff. And she thought, she has never seen the movie, so she was just listening to the audio of it. And she's like, this movie sounds terrible, because she's just hearing the words. And I'm like, yeah, I guess if you pay attention to the lines, it's either very, formulaic, very common superhero trope type stuff, nothing groundbreaking in this movie. Or it's like weird quantum realm, speak that doesn't make any sense. And I like how Paul Rudd's characters, Scott Lang, kind of meta humor where he points out, do you just put quantum in front of everything, whenever you're explaining these things? So I think, yeah, you have to have good actors to deliver these sort of silly lines, or it's just going to be, it could have been terrible, I think, because at the end of the day, I don't think this movie was groundbreaking, right. But it did a good job of bringing the humor back from the first film. Michael Pena steals every scene that he's in, just like the first film.
But it was an improvement on the first film, because I enjoyed this movie much. I liked the first film a lot, but I thought, and it's rare for sequels to really improve on the original. I think it's very apparent that this movie improved on the original, because now the characters better. Everyone understands their character a lot more. They're not trying to figure out where the character fits. The pacing was very on point. I didn't think the pacing was quite on point in Ant-Man. It's kind of moved sluggish during the time when they were trying to recruit Scott. Whereas here, you had a very, very solid pacing. There's nothing in the film that I would have cut out or shortened. And also the villain, they did a great job with Ava, that anytime you have a relatable villain, that's going to be better. That's why, in the first film, I don't even remember the name of the villain. Honestly, right. He's just evil corporate man, evil bald corporate man and also I hate this trope that sometimes happens even in Marvel films, where the bad guy has to be a mirror image of the good guy. Sure. So like in the original Iron Man, it's Iron Man versus Ironmonger. It's two guys in an iron suit. In Ant-Man, it's one guy in the Ant-Man suit, then in the Yellow Jacket suit. But it's much more interesting here, where you have the Ghost, who can't shrink or change size, but the ability to phase through objects allows her to fight Scott Lang and Hope Van Dyne in interesting ways. That just makes it, it just makes it a lot better. The one thing I would have changed, maybe villain wise, I wasn't a big fan of Sonny Burch's character coming in. I thought, kind of disrupted the tone a little, chewing the scenery. I don't know why they didn't just bring in Justin Hammer. If you need an evil tycoon, an evil weapons manufacturer, just bring back Justin Hammer, who was one of the antagonists in Iron Man 2. That'd probably be my biggest improvement or suggestion.
It was interesting that they had more than one villain. So you had, Sonny Burch, you had Ava, and you had this And then you kind of had the FBI agents who were kind of not they weren't really villains, but
They're
they were
foils.
right.
Yeah.
They were a kind of antagonist, and you had these three poles of I've got to avoid all of them sort of thing, and that undercurrent where Scott is under house arrest and he's trying to avoid getting caught breaking his terms of house arrest, and I think that lends some. I mean, we don't want to oversell this movie, but it lends some complexity to the plotting anyway, and I did like that. I can see your point. Like the Sonny Birch subplot did threaten to kind of make it a little too many directions at once, too many things in the pot. I can see that going through it. So kind of looking at it, kind of look at the movie itself. It opens with this cold open, this extended flashback sequence. In fact, first it starts a black screen, but just voices of Michelle Pfeiffer and Michael Douglas, Hank and Janet. And then we get their faces, and then we have this amazing CGI of young Michael Douglas and young Michelle Pfeiffer. I gotta say, not too Uncanny Valley. There was a little bit of that looks a little strange, but not too much. I mean, it was. They're
getting good at it.
Yeah.
They used photographs circa 1985 for Michelle Pfeiffer to reconstruct her face, but they're getting really good.
Yes, it was. I mean, it was amazing. I have to say, and then we go through this flashback of them this mission where Janet gets lost in the quantum realm. We don't get any explanation of why there's this missile, where it's going, who's going to blow up, who sent it. Doesn't matter because to this film, it just matters the result of it, which is that she sacrifices herself and ends up lost, and they think forever. And you have it in the narrative framework of their husband and wife and with their daughter, and they're going on a quote unquote business trip. They're going to save the world or whatever they're saving, and then you have this moment where they have to leave their daughter, and you think about the context of being a superhero. One parent is dangerous enough, but having both parents going on missions like this, it just seems really bad. Like, you shouldn't do that. Risk both mother and father at once and risk turning your children to orphans. But I thought it was an interesting mechanism, this extended flashback before the opening credits, before anything else, to go through this, basically setting up the movie. What did you feel like watching this, especially when we get to the part where the father has to tell his daughter that her mother isn't coming home? As a dad, it hits me right in the feels,
Same here. I get teary in the beginning of this movie because I have to travel a lot for work and leave my family as well. So I completely understand it. And I thought it was great. It was tight, compact, got the emotions and backstory, because we learned a lot of this. This was told already in Ant-Man. Right. For people who haven't seen Ant-Man before, you have to be able to retell it for people. So it was done in a very efficient way, but also in a way that preserved the emotional core by adding the scene of them leaving, which is something we didn't see in Ant-Man. So it helps even the veteran audience.
Yeah, I thought, can he ever get the regulator to work right? I mean, I feel like
Right.
It was supposed to be Hank that shrunk down, but the regulator never works. It never worked for Scott, and it feels like he can never get it right. But I think eventually he just got rid of the regulator. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, I felt like that was like Trent said, it's a good way for those who haven't seen the first Ant-Man to just get introduced to the story right away and get caught up to the family dynamic. And it was very emotional, and you got to see, even though we only saw Janet for maybe 5 minutes total on screen the whole movie, she really played a pivotal role at the beginning and the end of the movie. And it's I remember when they were marketing the movie, they kind of made her out to be like one of the stars of the film. But obviously that wasn't the case. But she's probably the most intriguing character, because you see at the end, she has some powers from the quantum realm, and we don't quite understand what it means, but it looks like there's potential there for some serious storylines in the future.
Yeah. If
but I
something
felt like
changes in
the beginning.
if
Go ahead.
if there's something that changes drastically in the second Infinity War movie, which, come on, we all know it will.
Yeah. Come on.
Well, this movie ties in well with that, which I'm sure we'll talk about before the end of our time together.
Yes, I definitely want to mention that. So we get the opening credits, then it's present day, and then we have Scott in his house. During at the end of his house arrest, he's under house arrest because he violated the Sokovia Accords by going to Germany with Captain America in Captain America: Civil War. That's one of the things that the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe almost got wrong, I think, which is introducing the Sokovia Awards, which I suppose you needed for Civil War, but it very close got bogged down into this political, the machinations, which is these are action movies, so you got to keep the action up. You don't want to end up Phantom Menacing to these movies.
I also didn't like when General Thunderbolt in Ross Thunderbolt was talking to them in Civil War. He's like, look at what happened in Washington and New York. This is your fault. I would have said, weren't you going to blow up New York with a nuclear bomb?
Right, yeah.
Wait a minute. Everything in Washington was your guys' fault with S.H.I.E.L.D. All right. Sokovia is our fault. I'll give you that one. But I would say you guys are way more at fault than us. That was me mad that nobody stood up and said, you guys are way worse than us.
Exactly.
But yeah, I see your point.
Right. Well, that's actually an interesting sort of a trope or cliche that's sort of entered into superhero sort of stories these days, is the real world backlash against all the damage that superheroes do. And I wonder if that's a little bit of a reaction to Man of Steel a little bit. I don't know. I guess these movies were in production before Man of Steel came out. But that I remember one of the reactions to Man of Steel was, what did they do to that city, the metropolis? They basically wiped out this city. How many tens of thousands of people are dead from this Superman battle?
But that wouldn't even be the problem. The problem is Superman just doesn't care. He's just like, great, I'm gonna get some more punching in, and then he makes out with Lois Lane and the city's ruined. Right. If he had at least been horrified at the destruction that had took place, then it'd be like, oh, this is a really tragic thing. Hopefully that he'll avenge this. But it was just a complete lack of self-awareness by the filmmakers is the problem. That's
true. That's right. Yeah, it was very odd, very odd. So Scott is under house arrest, and he's also running a security business with his old criminal crew. Who better to run security than former thieves, which actually we've seen in real life. Some of these guys reform and start businesses to stop guys like themselves. So they're running this business. Meanwhile, Scott is being, dad to his daughter, in the world's greatest indoor home play space. I mean, this is
seriously.
I'm like, I want to build this out of cardboard for my kids in my house. I'm not sure my wife would go for it, but this is the sort of thing a dad who's a home alone ends up doing, I suppose. But so they have this amazing moment. I mean, so we're setting him up as this amazing great dad, and for all his flaws, and Scott Lang has plenty of them. As dad, as we're being presented, being dad is not, he's not bad at being a dad. He's good at being a dad. So it's interesting to see that relationship that they set right in the beginning.
And that's good to continue the plot, because to be a good dad, he can't go back to prison. Right. And so for the rest of the plot, you're really rooting for Scott to not get caught again, because that's the one thing he is good at. I also appreciated in this little scene was how they brought in the FBI agent, Jimmy Woo, who's played by Randall Park.
Right.
So once again, to try to, you have a lot of backstory. Well, the thing that could have been botched with this film would be if it had simply, what's the word I'm looking for here? If they had just crammed all the exposition in the first 10 minutes, and this happened in Civil War, and then this happened, where you have, it's just delightful, Jimmy Woo, who's a character, by the way, that is older in Marvel Comics than I think Ant-Man. He is from the 1960s from Yellow Claw Comics. And then, so that is a throwback to an older Marvel character with FBI agent Jimmy Woo. That he says, oh, Cassie, this might be a lot of complicated grown-up stuff, but you know how you can't draw on the walls well, your daddy went to Germany with Captain America and drew on the walls by violating subsection C, Article 4 of the Sokovia Accords. It was just a delightful way to put all that back together to know, oh, here's why this happened, and then you can move forward.
Right. Yeah, I really liked how they kind of used the Agent Wu character to sort of subvert some of the expectations that we have about these movies. There was at the end of the movie, he kind of confronts Scott, who he knows has gotten away with something, and he says, I'll see you again, and Scott's kind of like, where are you coming back? Are you inviting me out to dinner or something? And then you get this awkward moment where Jimmy's like, well, did you want to go? Oh, okay, never mind. And like, I mean, it's just these funny moments where it sort of subverts the usual expectations of what you think a guy in this position.
Well, that's why the film
do.
Works so well.
Yeah.
All of the characters in it are humanized. Even the FBI agent, he's like, wow, you're really good with kids. Thanks. I'm also a youth pastor. It's just, these are all very human, relatable people, and that's what makes it work.
Right. One of my favorite bits of that is Scott tells him that he has been spending all my time learning close-up magic, and he's doing hand magic tricks, and then at one point you see Wu in the background. He's online learning magic tricks in his office when one of the agents comes in to confront him. I mean, it's just these fun little beats that they sprinkle through the movie that kind of break up the seriousness or the action. So we have Scott has this weird dream of being in the quantum realm, and then of seeing Janet, and then being Janet in a memory of her and young Hope. And we find out later that this is a result of Hank and Hope opening up a bridge to the quantum realm, and Janet reaching out through it. Somehow she's got this link with Scott because he was there. There's a lot of this, mumbo jumbo, technical, wavium stuff. But we have this discussion of the quantum realm. They brought it up in the first movie, but they don't talk much about the reality of it here. But the fact is when we talk about the quantum realm, there is a science related to quantum mechanics about stuff that's smaller than atoms, the stuff that atoms are made up of. But I'm not sure whether it's worth discussing like this idea of there being a quantum realm and whether you could exist in it, what it would be like. I mean, frankly, I think it's just we needed another dimension. We didn't want to say an alternate dimension, so we said a tiny place that they could shrink to.
Well, what is hard is that alternate dimensions are much more believable. You have to I have to suspend disbelief a lot with the Ant-Man series. Well, in the original comics, what made the Ant-Man suit work were the Pym particles. And the Pym particles are the real hand-wavy stuff to make it work, because if you took a person's atoms and expand, because it's true that there's a lot of empty space between our atoms. So if you shrank a person, but they retained their mass, they would just become incredibly dense. And, they'd have a hard time moving around. They'd fall through things. Or if you turn them into Giant Man, like in the film when he's 60 feet tall, if he retains all his atoms but his size increases, he would just kind of become the equivalent of a Macy's Thanksgiving Day balloon and float away.
Right.
Because his density would be lighter than air. So you have to say, well, the Pym particles displaced it. Well, fine. I just want to have a fun movie. But yeah, a person, how are they still retaining their own molecules if they're smaller than atoms? Are their molecules smaller than atom now? Yeah, I mean, so there is this kind of, when you go down to quarks and strings, which are, the fundamental building blocks of matter, there's weird things that happen there that we can't completely explain, but, it's not the quantum realm of the movie.
Right.
Yeah, it's just quantum entanglement.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're just putting quantum in front of things, right?
Exactly, yeah. But, and I think...
now, quantum entanglement is a real thing where particles their spin or charge can be correlated with another particle that is separated them by a certain distance, which normally you wouldn't see in the macro world, but can happen at the quantum level. So they take real things and just extrapolate a whole heck out of it.
Right.
Yeah. And I think, it's good to bring up this quantum realm stuff, because I think it's obvious that this is going to be an important part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe going forward. I think, I don't think it's a secret that, in Avengers 4, we're going to discover more of the quantum realm. And you know, we didn't see Ant-Man at all in Infinity War, so that kind of suggests that he's going to play quite a pivotal role in Avengers 4.
Right.
And as we see in the after credits scene, he's still in the quantum realm when the timely snap.
I want to put a pin in that. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So hopefully, we can make fun of all the scientific mumbo jumbo. I mean, at the end of the day, these are superhero films. They're comic books, you know, coming to life, and you know, we have to suspend disbelief a little bit. But if it's going to be a major part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe going forward, then they're going to have to flesh out that world, you know, a little better and kind of explain things a little more. That's a little more maybe believable, or like where you can at least say, okay, I can deal with that. I can believe that.
Yeah. The quantum entanglement, speaking of which, I remember reading about, they want to use that as a way to create a faster than light communication where if you can make molecules or atoms vibrate in sync across great distances, then can you do that in such a way as to make it predictable and reproducible, and thus create communicate? Like they're not sure how it works. That's one of the interesting things about it, is things that should not be able to react as instantly without the speed of light being an issue. Then so it's that's one of the aspects of it. So we're not sure how it works, but if we can make it work, can we create communications that are not dependent on the speed of light, like between Mars and Earth, with the minutes of delay and that sort of thing. They even it's all highly speculative, but one of the things that they've even talked about is like, do we use quantum entanglement for transporter technology, which is a whole nother podcast.
Oh man. Oh man.
I don't want to be killed and have a duplicate of me made, but we'll talk about that in Secrets of Star Trek. That's a whole nother. So what we found, one of the things they bring up is, and so there's, like we said, there's a lot of stuff in this movie that is sort of assumed from the first movie. And one of the things that comes up is Hank and Hope are on the run, and they're mad at Scott because something he did made them, fugitives from justice. Can you remind? It's been a long time since I saw the first movie. Can you remind me what it was that he did?
It's because he went to Berlin he went to help Captain America. Well, Hank said, "You went to Germany to fight the Avengers, Scott." Because so he took the Ant-Man suit. He went to Germany. He fought alongside Captain America against Iron Man, and he did this. And Hank Pym, because in the original Ant-Man, when they had this problem, Scott says, which we always say is, is this kind of a lampshade, like a meta joke to the audience. Maybe we should really call the Avengers. It's kind of like in Thor: The Dark World, the world's going to end. Maybe we should call the Avengers right now instead of just Thor. So he goes there, and Hank Pym in the original Ant-Man said he didn't want to call the Avengers because he didn't want Tony Stark to get his hands. He didn't want Howard Stark back in the 80s to get his hands on the Ant-Man suit. So he didn't want Tony Stark to get a hold of it. They wanted to do this themselves. So he was, of course, peeved that Scott fought Captain America, and he ended up getting captured and imprisoned by Tony Stark. And thankfully, though, he somehow, which is a bit of a plot hole, he somehow found a post office box at that Berlin airport and mailed the suit back home so that, at least Tony Stark and others wouldn't get a hold of it. He still got captured. But according to the Sokovia Accords, people with powers or people with advanced technology have to register with the government. So like Iron Man does not have any Tony Stark has no powers, but his suits are more advanced than any military tech, so he has to register with the government. The same thing would be for Hank Pym. He has to register his tech with the government. They refuse to do so they're criminals under the Sokovia Accords.
Okay, that makes sense. Again, it's kind of complicated, and there's the danger of it being overcomplicated for the general audience, but comic book fans, we geek out on this sort of stuff, so that's fine. We've mentioned that there are a lot of times when you have to kind of suspend disbelief and move on. One of these things is, the shrinking building, which they keep expanding and shrinking. I wanted to get to this. This bothered me. Yeah. Because nobody notices a building that wasn't there in an empty lot. Nobody sees a giant building shrinking down. And when he tilts this shrunken building, doesn't everything inside slide to one end?
I thought
Yeah, so the furniture bolted down.
Maybe it's bolted down. Then I thought, well, how does it get power? Well, maybe it has
plumbing.
Maybe it has its own internal generators and water recirculation systems.
Yeah.
But I did think about it.
Yes. I mean, it's these sorts of things occur to me, just like when Ava, who cannot help but be like phasing through matter. This is a problem with all phasing technology in every science fiction, which is you walk through walls, but are the soles of your feet somehow solid? Like, how come you don't fall through the earth?
I thought about this as well. I thought maybe phasers learn the ability when they pass through a wall that the wall sequentially goes through their feet and soles. They learn how to let it kind of roll through them so they can pass through objects while maintaining the ability to not gravitationally get pulled into the center of the earth, which ironically, though, there's a great episode of Batman Beyond called Sneak Peek, where the new Batman in the future, Terry McGinnis, has to fight a journalist who gets the best scoops because he has phasing technology. And at the end of the movie, his phasing technology goes wrong and he just falls through the earth, and you assume he goes to the center of the earth.
Oh, wow.
Which is pretty graphic for a kid's show. But yeah, I thought about that too. Yes.
So it's like a lot of these things, we put a pin in it, we move on, but we acknowledge it because we're geeks and that's what we do. I thought a nice funny moment was when Scott complained that Hope got wings and blasters, whereas he didn't, because she's the Wasp and he's just an ant. And what does an ant got? Ants got, strength, but a Wasp gets to sting things, and that's what Hope gets, and she's really good at it. She's action hero Hope, as she kicks butt of the gang. So this gang run by Sonny Birch, they apparently get quantum tech, forbidden quantum tech on the black market, and that comes in component form apparently that you can just plug into stuff. And he's going to double cross them because he wants control of whatever. He misunderstands what they're doing and makes assumptions and wants control of it. Meanwhile, Ava is out there and she wants the tech, and she kind of intervenes in this fight. She's the ghost who walks through walls. I like that one of Scott's buddies at the security firm, who's apparently Russian in background, calls her Baba Yaga, which is a Russian folktale of a witch, which is just a funny reference.
And as a character in Marvel Comics, it's another throwback for eagle-eyed fans.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's interesting.
There are a million Marvel characters out there. Just when you think you've heard of them all, there are yet more. One
of the funniest parts of the movie is when he starts singing the Baba Yaga song, sort of when he sees ghosts
a little under his breath, like he's remembering it from his childhood. Yes, that is a good great moment. So Ava lives in this basically a Fresnel chamber, a Fresnel lens chamber, which is like a Fresnel lens is what you see in a lighthouse, and it focuses light. It makes the light beams from a lighthouse stronger as it beams out. So somehow these Fresnel lenses that she's living inside, that makes up this room that she's living in, are helping her with her problem. She was, as a child, we have a nice flashback sequence where, as a child, she was exposed by her dad, exposed to the quantum realm, and she ended up becoming this phasing in and out. And then Shield, which is often portrayed as sort of, they're supposed to be the good guys, but sometimes they walk the line. They're a little in the gray zone. And Shield used her, promised her to heal her, but we're never going to do it, is from her, she concluded, but used her as sort of a ninja assassin sort to take advantage of her unique skills. And now with Shield gone, she's been kind of left hanging, and she reached out to Bill Foster, who is old partner of Hank, and they've been estranged. We have this nice moment, this kind of funny, a little off color, but still kid friendly because it's a little obscure moment in Bill's office where he and Scott are comparing how big they once got, the biggest they ever got. And Hope kind of, it gives him a zinger for that one. That was pretty good. And then it turns out that Bill Foster is not quite a good guy, not quite a bad guy, but is sort of a little in between, which I thought was an interesting choice for this character. He's he's working against our heroes at one point, but he's not. He doesn't want Ava to do, to hurt people, or he's just trying to help her because he has this fatherly relationship with her. I thought that was an interesting twist to the story. Unexpected.
Yeah, it helps to have, once again, an antagonist who is relatable and is not just, evil for evil's sake.
Right. So at this point in the movie is when the action just, kind of ramps up, and we have lots of fun action scenes. We have a lot of different chases and fights. That we do have this fun scene where we have Sonny Birch shows up at the security firm offices and subjects Luis to truth serum, which the guy with the truth serum keeps saying it's not truth serum. There's no such thing, which is funny because in real life we talk about sodium pentothal. And people in popular culture, they call it truth serum, and people who know such things say it's not truth serum. It doesn't work that way. But the fact is this stuff that they injected with actually is truth serum, and so everyone keeps denying it until at some point, they accept it under the influence of the truth serum. They have to admit it. So that is a funny gag that they kind of rolls through. We have this moment where Scott is with his daughter, and she's this is also kind of a trope where she kind of bucks him up and says, you go back out there, Dad, and you be a hero. And there's this funny line where, it says, you can do it. You can do anything. You're the world's greatest grandma, which I thought, because of the trophy that she gave him, was world's greatest grandma. So that was a nice moment. There's this funny gag, and I thought it might have been a little subtle. When they went to go see Bill Foster, they're walking across this college campus, and these three fugitives are wearing ball caps and sunglasses. And Scott points out another one of those moments where you're poking the balloon. Hey, we're wearing ball caps and sunglasses. They're not real disguises. We're not going to really get away with this. Later on, when Hank is escaping from the FBI, what does he do? He puts on a ball cap and sunglasses.
Sunglasses.
so a lot of fun. So we get. I want to kind of bring things around to us to wrap it up here, because we have a lot of different, like I said, a lot of different action sequences here, and you can bring up anything you want if I've jumped over it, but. At the end, they get Janet from the quantum realm. She is evidently able to help Ava, which is, even with all the bad things Ava has done, she's able to help her. And Scott is able to get away with, having violated the terms of his house arrest. And meanwhile, are Hank and Hope still fugitives, right? Is that how we've ended it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're still fugitives, so they're on the run. Ava's on the run. Everything seems to turn out just fine until we get to the post-credits scene.
Yeah.
Right, and this is the bit where you got to say you always wait to the end of the credits with the Marvel movies. You just always have to. So we get to this post-credit scene where Scott has shrunk down back to the quantum realm, and he's okay, guys, it's time for, he's talking to them and he's cut off. He's like, guys, he's calling them. And then what we go back to is the camera shifts back to ashes falling through the air. And we know, having seen Infinity War, this is the moment when Thanos has activated the Infinity Gauntlet. And all of the, he killed half of the population, which, unlucky for them.
Though I think that everyone was really nonchalant on that rooftop. Nobody thought, maybe we should be worried about this thing in Wakanda. No one's really nonchalant about everything, but all right.
That was very interesting that, of all the people that they called up to go fight, Thanos in Wakanda, no one said we have to go get Ant-Man or the Wasp. Maybe they don't know about the Wasp, but no one was thinking we had to go get Ant-Man to join us in the fight, which is an interesting commentary. Which it's actually
Well, I think Sorry, yeah. In Infinity War, they kind of explain it like in a one line.
Yeah, they say he's on house arrest.
It's like, yeah, Scott's on house arrest, and I think they said something about Hawkeye too.
Right.
Why
they
he
made
couldn't,
deals with
why
the
he couldn't make the fight. Yeah, they made deals, and Scott's on house arrest.
I have to jump in here. I know we're wrapping at a close here.
Yes.
I have to run to a meeting, so could I offer one last thought about the post credit scene? You guys can take us away.
Yes, let's do that.
So my last thought is my predictions are Scott is trapped in the quantum realm. The snap has occurred. My prediction is that Janet warns him about a time vortex. Don't fall into that, or we won't be able to help you. Scott will use the time vortex to escape the quantum realm, and he may go into the future, like many years after the snap, and encounter possibly a grown-up Cassie who will have his grown-up daughter who will have her superhero mantle of stature from the comics. And she'll be, because in the early film, she says she wants to become a hero. And so that might be fulfilled in Avengers 4. And he'll meet her and Tony Stark and others in the future after the snap, but use the quantum realm to go back in time to fix things. That's my prediction, but I have to run off. It was great chatting with you all, and I hope you all take it away. Love to come back again.
All right, great. Thanks, Trent.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Thanks, Trent.
So Andrew, that's actually a really interesting theory. I know that there are a number out there. I'm pretty sure Captain Marvel plays a role in the solution of this. We're going to have a lot of different. I'm trying to say a lot of there's a lot of theories about how this all gets resolved. I didn't know. Like, again, I'm not as much of a comic book person, but I didn't know that Cassie herself ends up becoming a superhero character.
Yeah, she does. Yeah, she ends up. Yeah, she takes on a few different mantles. She at some point she becomes Ant-Girl. She becomes, basically she takes over the role of Ant-Man.
Interesting.
And then she's Stature. And she had a few other iterations, but she's always known as Cassie. Everyone just calls her Cassie in the comics.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then it's kind of fascinating because I think about the some of the stuff that Doctor Strange had said in Infinity War about there are 14 million possibilities. There's only one way I can see through it, and he kind of like says we're not going to like that way, and we got the idea that this is the way. But it's interesting also that being in the quantum realm seems to have somehow shielded Scott from the effects of this, unless he was just happened to be one of the half of the population that survives.
Right.
It's kind of curious. I did like, by the way, I kind of skipped over it. I did like seeing the tardigrades, the creatures, which
those are cool.
Which they're a relatively recent scientific discovery, but everybody loves them now. Because now we see them in Star Trek, we see them in Marvel movies. So it's kind of fun to see them again. The only other thing I really wanted to bring up, and then I'll throw it to you if you have any last thoughts on it, was the credit scene dioramas. Now, I mean, that's not a huge thing, but I just thought it was so fun to see that they had, created these models of these various scenes from the movie, and it was just a neat little thing that they threw in there. They didn't have to, I suppose, but it was just a fun little, gadget they threw in before the post-credit scene because they knew we'd be sitting there waiting for it, so it was nice.
Yeah, I think if you look at almost every Marvel movie does a really good job of that. They put I've noticed they put a lot of effort into those credits. Every one of them has a unique sort of flavor to it, and I really enjoyed the dioramas. They're really impressive. And just to go back to the after credit scene, in my opinion, I would call it's probably my favorite Marvel after credit scene. It's not like the most, groundbreaking or shocking scene because this is post Avengers Infinity War. We know what happens, but it kind of gives you they chose Ant-Man and the Wasp as the first film to premiere after Infinity War,
right?
And I think they did it for a reason. I mean, the ultimate reason I think is to introduce more of the quantum realm aspect of it, because that's going to play a role in Avengers 4. But I think also it's kind of like to alleviate some of the the sadness and the dread
Right.
of the ramifications and of Infinity War, just bringing this wholesome, funny superhero movie into the fold that doesn't take itself too seriously.
Right.
But yeah, I think the after credit scene, just reminds you like, hey, this really happened, and look at what's the world's in a mess right now. And then the second after credit scene, it might seem like it was just a little one-off, kind of humorous with the ant,
Right.
playing the drums.
Yes.
But then you hear like the emergency broadcast system, on the TV,
Right.
and then you hear, like, I think you hear like cars crashing outside and stuff like that, and people screaming. That shows you like this event really took place, and it was not a joke, and there's real weight to it, and it's going to be interesting how they're going to figure it all out.
Right.
And I think what Trent said before he left about Scott possibly traveling to the future, I think that is going to play a role. And I think I think is also going to travel to the past, because I think, really one of the only ways to kind of reverse what happened is if you can go back in time, literally. I mean,
Right.
Because those, unless you have all Infinity Stones, there's nothing else that could really reverse what happened. So I'm very interested to see, where they take this, and I think we got our first hint of it in Ant-Man and the Wasp.
It is interesting because if you mention, if Hank mentions the time vortex, and nothing happens with it in the short term, it's just not just a throwaway line. It's that it has meaning to something, that they intend to do something with that. So that was interesting. Let me ask you your opinion on these whole post-credit scenes in general. I mean, it was such a big deal, when Iron Man did it and some of the others. Now it's sort of become has it become overdone? Should they just put this at the end of the movie and then roll credits? I mean, or have they set up a situation now where they have to have a post-credit scene? What do you think?
As a fan of these movies, like, I live for those scenes. So I know whenever, a movie, like whenever a Marvel movie ends, like, I can't wait to just keep sitting in my seat, usually around a full theater on opening night, with everyone just like chatting and giddy about, the scene that's coming up. I think that adds to the movie theater experience,
right?
That I enjoy. I like that communal aspect of it where everyone gets hyped up. Is it overdone? Maybe, because like, it's not a surprise anymore,
Right.
So you're always expecting it. But I think, the fact that, again, you kind of get some time to maybe say to the person next to you, like, hey man, that movie was really good, or hey man, I didn't like this about the movie, and kind of shave off some of the emotions from the film that you just watched,
right? And
then have either a shocking after credit scene, just smack you in the face to build anticipation for the next film, or to have something funny that's kind of tongue in cheek that they sometimes do that doesn't really advance the story. So no, I'm
okay.
I'm a big fan of it. I think it's great that they make you wait. It's just, like I said, a part of that experience in the theater.
One of the things I heard after Infinity Wars, like, people who don't know sometimes don't wait. In fact, I've been in theaters where I'm like, everyone's leaving. I'm like, where are you going? Don't go anywhere. There's more to come. And I heard like a reaction to some people didn't like Infinity War, but like, because at the end of it they left and didn't get the Fury and what's her name, Hill. They didn't see
Maria Hill.
They didn't see them get the signal from Captain Marvel. And there's sort of this bleak ending to this movie where Thanos sits, self-satisfied on his hill after he's killed half the universe. And it's people walking to the theater going, what the heck did I just watch? And they didn't even know there was going to be a sequel to it. Like, that's horrible. So there are definitely downsides for casual viewers if they're not up on what's going on or what to expect. So But I agree. I kind of like this. In fact, I don't walk out of any movie now before the end of the credits roll because you never know.
Yeah, exactly. You really never know. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So, do you have any last thoughts on the movie as a whole? We've kind of really run through it pretty well, I think.
Yeah, I think the only other thing I would add is, I don't think we got to talk about it too much, but I thought they handled Wasp's character really well,
Yeah.
and in a lot of ways, it's her movie. I mean,
Yes.
she's the one that's most skilled, and she knows what she's doing. Scott is, for every right choice he makes 5 wrong ones. But she's the one that's sort of like, she kicks ass, and she has a goal in mind, and she doesn't play that usual damsel in distress.
Yes.
She's really, and she didn't really come from a tortured past. I mean, other than, not growing up with her mother, she decides to be a superhero because, she looked up to her dad, and she just wants to do the right thing and help the world. And in this movie, help find her mom.
Let me ask you this. Do you find her change of heart towards Scott a believable progression of the character? Did you like by the end of it? She's now back. I won't say in love with because they don't really establish it, but she likes him.
Sure.
There's romantic interest again. Did you find that a believable progression for the character?
Yeah. I mean, was it really fleshed out? In the best way? Maybe not. But I think the one reason why they broke up was because Scott went to Germany,
right?
Without telling her, or without asking for her help, and she felt betrayed by that. But I felt that throughout the film that Scott kind of gained that trust back, by helping them ultimately.
Okay.
Throughout the film, and putting his neck on the line, because he could have just stayed home, and he was risking not being able to see his daughter ever again,
right?
And so I think if you think about it that way, it's believable. And it didn't, for me, it didn't deter me from the film. It worked.
I think, I agree. I think that it did work because it wasn't a sudden switch. It was you could see a progression through. I think it was really well written. Well, I think that sort of sums it up. I just, before we go, I wanted to encourage folks to remember that SQPN, we're in the middle of our giving campaign where we're trying to meet our budget, and to be able to continue on as an organization, frankly, we need your support. If you can go to sqpn.com/give and give what you can, become a patron. It supports the organization, and frankly, if we don't reach our goal, these podcasts go away. It's just the fact of life. So we really do appreciate the support you're giving. And if you enjoy this, we've got lots more coming, and we've got other shows on SQPN that you'll like too. The future is bright for SQPN, so help us build that future. We really do appreciate it. One way you can do that is if you go to Amazon.com, you go to smile.amazon.com when you do your Christmas shopping, and choose SQPN as your nonprofit organization. We get a percentage of the purchase prices. You don't pay more. Amazon is donating basically to us when you do that. So that said, remember to like Secrets of Movies and TV Shows on Facebook, on our SQPN Facebook page. Retweet the show on Twitter. Leave us comments. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher. Tune in your favorite podcast app, and on YouTube, where we post the show as an audio-only video. And if you do subscribe on YouTube, hit the bell to get notifications. And above all, share the podcast with your friends. Help us grow our community of listeners and to reach more folks with what we're doing. If you're enjoying it, chances are someone you know is going to enjoy this too. So again, if you want to give us some feedback, you can do that at sqpn.com/secrets or the StarQuest Facebook page. Find the episode there, leave a comment, or send us an email to secrets@sqpn.com. You can find the relevant links to our discussion on our show notes on sqpn.com. And like I said, be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't. I'm repeating myself now, so I'm just going to finish up by saying thank you to Trent Horn for joining us today. He had to leave a little early, like you said. And Andrew Hermes, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Oh, thank you very much. It was my pleasure, and I'd love to do it again.
Excellent. And once again, I'm Don Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Movies and TV Shows on StarQuest. This is Dom Bettinelli again. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast and that you'll help us keep producing the podcast you love. Thank you for your generosity. To make your pledge and find out about the free thank you gifts we'd like to send you, visit sqpn.com/give. That's sqpn.com/give.